It was only until I began living at the vicarage across the street, when I now live in a house, that I became painfully aware that I have what we like to call growing edges with respect to gardening. It's not merely that I don't know what to plant or how to do so, although that's true. It's not merely that I don't know how to keep a plant alive, although that's true. But as it pertains to the lessons today, it is certainly true that I cannot tell the difference between a weed and a flower. And so I have a new adage which is giving me comfort and helping me sleep at night, and I give it to you all. One person's weed is another person's flower. Where this fits with the lesson today is that Jesus uses the infamous mustard seed analogy to describe the kingdom of God. The context is that this is the early stages of Jesus' ministry in Galilee, where he is setting forth a new form of teaching. It is called the parable. The teenagers know what this means from geometry class, but adults, you're going to have to search back through the sands of time. In geometry, a parabola goes like this on a graph. It takes you from one side to the other. Therefore, a parable takes you from one awareness to another new awareness. Jesus loved parables. It's nothing more difficult, of course, than a metaphor. And it is an effective tool that Jesus employed to get his message across about the kingdom of God. Some parables by Jesus would be pointed critiques of the government. Some would be allegory. Some would be about simple, menial things like gardening. And so the mustard seed, one of the famous of all of Jesus' parables. We might just use that, of course, as a metaphor for this church. Matthew, Mark, and Luke's Gospels all share this story. But in Luke and Matthew, the mustard seed is edited by the writers to be described as growing into big, vibrant trees. In Mark, it's a little different. The mustard seed is a strong little nut, and when nurtured, it grows into the greatest of what? Not trees, shrubs. Shrubs, it may help you to understand in first century Palestine, to the agriculturally savvy listener back then, would have caused a little bit of laughter. Shrubs, to them, are giant weeds. But one person's weed is another person's flower. Take, for example, one of the greatest examples. A young Jewish man prophetically preaches about radical inclusivity and the upending of patriarchal religious leadership. That man is a mustard seed, a tough little nut. And that tough little nut is crucified. That mustard seed was as dead as dirt. It might as well have been left buried under the soil, but 3 days later, God did something altogether new. It came back. It blossomed. It became a shrub, yes, but a glorious shrub. In God's eyes, the shrub is beautiful. And that shrub persevered and persisted and grew in spite of the odds. Take another example. You see, now I'm giving you some parables. Capital C Church. In the aftermath of the resurrection and the ascension of Jesus, the mustard seed was Peter and the other remaining disciples, and it was planted, that seed, on the Pentecost day, as described in Acts just a few weeks ago. The mustard seed of the church began sprouting a unique and multi-pronged shrub that defied expectation, persisted in its soil. Maybe it never was, and never will be the most attractive foliage in the garden, because it is a complex organism. And sure, it needed and still needs, especially this week, to be trimmed, and the dead brush thrown away. But even weeds sprout flowers. And take, for example, the issue of the moment, the crisis at the borders, with immigration officials separating migrant children from their parents. You can look at this any way you want, and I mean that, but I do think you ought to know where the Episcopal Church stands unequivocally, and that is where Jesus stands with those children and those parents. But also know unequivocally that it may not seem like it is happening this moment, but trust me, a mustard seed has been planted in that dry desert soil. We just don't know how or when it will break forth into new life. But you can see it happening. Like changes in temperature or clouds rolling in, people rising, venting their anger, pressing the issue, gaining awareness, demanding justice. And finally, closer to home, take another example, the church's marginalization of those who are different. I saw on the previous Sunday with my own 2 eyes a shrubbery moment at Mokena's first ever Pride. There, by the grace of God, were young people and families and children, lots and lots of children, gay and straight, trans and questioning, as myriad as the colors of the rainbow. And they were all coming up to this church's little table, the little table that could, right, Barb? With its little blue umbrella in the rain. And these people came up to spin a wheel and win a prize. And then you see our volunteers standing there ready to answer any questions, welcome them with open arms. You see treats baked by our own members who couldn't be there in person, individually packaged as prizes for the passersby. For some guests at the grace table that day, and I swear to you, I have been inundated with follow-up and questions this week. For some of those people, this was the first time they heard a church embrace them instead of ostracize them. They had no concept that a Christian church could actually welcome them. Can you believe that? The mustard seed that was planted that day may take weeks and months or longer to sprout in the ways we secretly hope they might, in metrics and numbers. But trust me, that shrub that began bursting out of the soil, that tough little nut of love and hope, began its strong, persistent climb out of the dead earth that day. This church plants mustard seeds, we might say, all the time, again and again. And if we are to take St. Paul at his word, and man, are they good words in 2 Corinthians today, then we can not only hope, but we can expect that mustard seeds that drop into dead soil will grow, and may even flower. And just like the empty tomb in Jerusalem, God makes dead things become new again. We are seeding now, seeding. We are always seeding. We are meant to believe, I believe, to examine the soil and find where our mustard seed or seeds may be able to make a little inroads, a little miracle grow. We are meant in seeding to find places where love can burst forth from dead soil and create something altogether new. Amen.